All right, welcome into Ethan Skolnick Starting 9 here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We're here every single Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. Sorry, I'll start to look at the camera correctly at some point here. Was at the Heat game last night, so that is what we're going to talk about today. We'll have Sean Rochester on here, one of the new additions to our network. He's going to join us in about 10 minutes. We'll get into everything that happened last night, but more importantly, where this team can go. We got into some of this on 5 on the Floor last night. Alex was with me at the game. We did a podcast with Greg Sylvander. You should check that out. That's on the podcast feeds, and I'm sure it'll be on the YouTube channel at some point today. Before we get started, though, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And for basketball fans, you should start paying attention to this because we are going to start doing some stuff with basketball with Underdog Fantasy. Go to underdogfantasy.com, download the app. You will get a free $25. That's right, a free $25 when you sign up using the code 5RSN. That's the number 5 RSN over at Underdog Fantasy. Yes, we've been playing all the NFL stuff. We promoted the best ball. The great thing about Underdog is it's like you do it once and you're done. Okay, when you draft a team, you're finished. You don't have to go in and make the waiver changes and pay attention on a Tuesday. None of that stuff. You just basically go on and you can go on the whole season before NFL games. But the big thing is we're transitioning a little bit here to NBA. So we're going to start drafting some NBA teams, draft with a group at 5 Reasons Sports. We're going to put together some leagues, and we're going to have some fun with it. The season starts, in about 2 weeks. So we're going to start doing this over the next week or so. But make sure you sign up, use that code 5RSN, get your $25, and you'll be ready for when we get this thing rolling here over the next week. And like I said, you can do up downs, you can be head to head, draft 3-player teams, draft 5-player teams, draft 12-player teams. There's a lot of stuff you can do at Underdog Fantasy. All right, getting back to stuff that we can do here. That's what this episode is going to be about. And, after a night like last night, which just felt good, I'll just say this, just as a reporter who's been in that building since the inception, I remember touring it when they were building it. Pat Riley took us on a tour. It was actually my first season covering the team because they were just starting to build it. That's how old I am. But it was like 96, 97. They were just starting to build the arena. The old pink elephant down the street, the Miami Arena, was like obsolete in like 6 years. So they were building this new palace by the bay, and Riley took a few of us. Yes, Ira was there. I was there. A lot of us have been there for a long time. A lot of people in the Heat organization have been there for a long time. And so it was just good to get back to that arena where it felt normal. And Erik Spoelstra talked about that after the game. Duncan Robinson talked about it. But honestly, other than the masks, you wouldn't really know that COVID happened there. It went right back to kind of the way it was. It was a full house. I mean, as much as a preseason game is going to be a full house, but people were able to come in. There wasn't the space seating or anything like that. In the media, we were back in our regular seats. I was back in section 106, which is where I've been ever since Mickey sold the seats down low that we used to sit in. So right about center court, we were above the first level. Last year, we were perched way up high with the scouts. And we were back in they served food to the media again. There was the interview room, they brought players in. The only thing that's not the same is there's no locker room at this point. Probably won't be for most of the season, if at all. But they did bring 3 players in afterwards. And so it just felt normal. And the atmosphere in the building felt normal, but it felt good. It felt good. It felt good because people were happy to be back there, but also they're happy to be back watching a refreshed team. It's like it all came together last night, even without Jimmy Butler. Everything that you wanted to see last night from the Heat, you saw, right? Other than Jimmy, who will be fine. Everything. What were the priorities going into that preseason game? How does Kyle Lowry look with his group? Great. Right? I mean, I keep making the Tim Hardaway comparison here. And the thing about it, Kyle's older than Tim was when he came. But Tim's body was also broken down and Kyle's is not. So I kind of put them on the same level here. And I tried to get Erik Spoelstra to comment on it a little bit. He laughed, but he was in the video room when Tim was brought in. And I don't think they've had a point guard like this since Tim. And this is no disrespect to Goran Dragic. I will say this all season. I love Goran Dragic, okay? I love what he provided, but he's a different kind of player. He's not a 7 assists in the first half player. And if you watch the assists, I went back and watched them last night. They're not cheap assists, okay? They are assists that are made because he's reading a play, because he's reading his teammates. It looked to me last night, thank you, Abel. It looked to me last night like Kyle Lowry had been playing with this group for a long time. It did. And even Bam says they haven't played much together in practice. I guess they've been rotating the groups a lot. But he says they clicked right away. High IQ players click. Now, we saw with the big three Heat that high IQ players took a little bit of time. Well, why was that? Because Dwayne and LeBron were used to operating in the same part of the floor. They were used to operating in the same times of the game. We'll bring Sean Rochester on here in a couple of minutes. They were used to that. And so then they were tripping over each other, right? And I don't think Chris Bosh will ever get enough credit for what he did to create that space for the two of them. But a lot of it they had to figure out on their own. But Kyle Lowry just fits. Like, he's not tripping over anybody else. He's doing something that nobody on this team was doing for the past 20 years. Who's been their most natural point guard since then? Jay Will? And Jay Will, they brought him in and coached him down. They told him, we don't want the white chocolate stuff, right? And then you know what happened? Jay Will listened so well, and he's never gotten enough credit for this. He changed his game enough that they were going the other direction by the end of the season. Jay Will play free because he had become so buttoned up. They have not had a player like Lowry since Tim. They just haven't. There's nobody else on the list. And we love Mario, we love Norris, but there's nobody like Kyle that's come through here. What else did you want to see? Tyler Hero, free of mind. He said something after the game last night that I don't think enough people picked up on. I tweeted out. He says, I'm just playing free. I'm just losing myself in the game. If you watched him last year, he was lost somewhere else. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into his personal life and everything else that he's going on. It's not my business. Okay. The only thing that I reported last year was that the team was concerned. Okay. That's it. I don't care what he does. The team was concerned. They were concerned that he wasn't putting enough work in the weight room more than anything else. But also, he wasn't playing free. If you watched him last year, Alex and I used to talk about this when we were at the games last year. There weren't those moments, like those flourishes that he had his rookie season, right? Like, not just a Philadelphia game with a 1-on-3 on the break, but just generally, he didn't have those moments where he just kind of took over games playing freely, where you could see he had that bounce. He didn't have it much last year. How could he? Beyond whatever personal stuff he was going through, beyond whatever issues he was going on with the team, and there were some, okay, with a couple other players that, maybe didn't get reported widely. But whatever was going on, okay, he also had no offseason after his rookie season. No time to work on anything, no time to rest his mind, no time to rest his body, no time. He didn't have anything. So I don't know why we should be surprised that when he's had a full offseason, he's gotten his personal life settled, it appears, okay? He's gotten in the weight room. He's been able to work on his game, and they've simplified his role. Like, he started last night, but essentially they asked him to do the same thing he's going to do off the bench. Just play off someone else. And then there'll be moments where you just go. So that was good. Tyler looks great. I think, and we'll talk to Sean about this, I think he could lead the team in scoring. I don't know if he's going to be consistent enough to do it, but he's set up to do it. I don't think anybody on this team is averaging 20. I don't. I think there's going to be 5 guys who average at least 14. PJ Tucker, what did you want to see? Exactly what you saw. Hit a corner 3. But the biggest thing he does is he's going to make the game easier for Bam Adebayo. And here's how, okay? And I got into this in the pod last night. He's not going to grab a bunch of rebounds. He is not going to put up big numbers, okay? He is going to look like one of the worst players in the league when you get into some of those advanced analytics. But he's going to spread his body out. He's going to box guys out, and Bam's going to grab rebounds because of it. That happened twice early in the game last night. Positive. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, both looked comfortable. Max just looks like he belongs. Max just looks like he's been doing this his whole life. He doesn't, and I mentioned this on the pod last night, okay? This is not a vertical team. They don't have a lot of high flyers. There's not a lot of Derek Joneses on this team, right? It's a horizontal team. They have guys who take up space who are going to make it difficult for people. Dedmon does that. Tucker does that. Lowry does that. Butler does that, okay? Markieff, to a certain degree, will do that. Different kind of team, the way to look at this. But the other things I liked, and we're going to bring on Sean here after I introduce you to one more sponsor. The other thing I liked was my biggest concern about this team has been the depth until Oladipo is back, because we don't know what Oladipo is going to look like when he comes back. I can tell you this. They're going to need to get him in the conditioning program significantly. He's a little heavier than I remember. But when he comes back, if he comes back, okay, this changes. But until then, they looked thin to me, not weight thin in terms of their bench. They have some dead roster spots. Let's just acknowledge. KZ hit a couple threes last night. I don't think they can count on him, okay? We know what UD's role is going to be. We know Depot is not there. The fact that they were able to get Caleb Martin on a two-way is huge. Like, it's crazy to talk about it like that, but like, he's not a two-way player. He had a couple sequences last night. I was like, what? I mean, I watched him in Charlotte, but he looked to me like the worst of the two brothers. He looked great last night. He looked great. He's in the right place defensively. He makes the right play offensively. He moves well. He shot the ball okay last night. So if they found something there where they have a sort of a plug and play piece when they need it, when Jimmy misses a game, which is going to happen, instead of having to put Hero in the starting lineup, you plug and play Caleb Martin. Remember what Spoelstra used to do with James Jones when he was the 11th or 12th man? That's what he likes to do. He doesn't like to mess with the bench. So I just, to me, there was a lot of positivity off of that. This comes in with the Heat cut KZ and signed Caleb Martin to a standard. I think anything's possible halfway through the season. I think KZ could still be moved to another team, but again, they're watching, they're watching the tax here. All right, we're going to get to Sean here in a second, get a little bit of a coach's perspective on what happened last night and where they can go. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Just had a friend of mine who sent someone down there yesterday. U-Brake Wheel Fix. Go to U-Brake Wheel Fix if you need your wheels repaired or you just want them to look nicer, right? You still want those Vice colors. You miss them on the court. I will say this. I don't miss them on the court. I don't. I like a regular basketball court. I'm sorry. But if you want them on your car, go to ubrakewheelfix.com. They're based right there in North Miami. Go say hello to Mark Dela Cruz and the rest of the good folks down there. I've been down there. It's cool just to watch them do what they do. They got fast turnaround times. They've got great service. Again, they could do the real refinishing. They could do the repairs. The streets of South Florida suck. You know that. And actually, it's real close to the Golden Glades interchange, which is like one of the worst spots over there. So as soon as you pop, your wheels, go over there and have Mark take care of them for you. So go to ubrakewheelfix.com, ubrakewheelfix.com. Make sure that you mention 5 Reasons down there. You will get a discount on your overall order. And if they don't know, just tell them, talk to Mark, and he'll take care of it. All right, so go to U-Brake Wheel Fix. See that? Over 5,000 custom colors. They can do anything. I watched them do aqua and orange for the Dolphins. I understand why you may not want that. All right, we're going to bring on our guy, Sean Rochester. You can follow him at SRochesterNBA. I finally got the Twitter handle correct. He gives us a little bit of coach's perspective here. Well, I feel like Brady and Alex are coaching with me on the pod all the time, but we'll bring Sean in here. But I'm just going to put you on the spot from the very beginning. Single most promising thing you saw last night?
Ball movement. I think simply that. I don't know if the pace is sustainable, but the way that the ball moves side to side, it pinged around like we saw 2 years ago before the bubble. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about the balance and scoring. I don't know if anybody's going to score 20. On any given night, anybody can lead us in scoring. And so if the ball's moving, it makes it so much harder to guard because you have to respect at least 4, if not 5 guys on the floor.
18 assists in the first half last night without Jimmy Butler. It may change a little with Jimmy. I think they might play it a little more free-flowing with him. And you talk about pace. I think that's one of the reasons the pace is not going to be sustainable because I think with Jimmy in there, they're going to play a little bit more deliberately. There's going to be sort of an objective to get to the line, which is something this team is going to do a lot, which is going to slow pace, allow them to set up their defense. That is something they want to do. But the thing about pace is this. I think there is a misconception that pace is created by everybody running hard. And Erik Spoelstra I've always had this conversation with him because he said this to me pretty much every year. Because whenever I ask him about pace, he'll say, yeah, everybody says they want to run until you tell them to run. Okay. And then once you tell him to run, like nobody's running anymore. And that's why he's doing this thing, the windmill thing on the side. And finally, at a certain point of the season, he just gives up on it. Kyle Lowry creates pace differently, though. It's hit-ahead passes. It's seeing the floor and getting it to somebody who's already on the move. Goran didn't, again, I will tolerate no Goran slander, but Goran didn't do that. Like, Goran was running on a break. It was basically a one-man break with maybe a trailer. It's Lowry's pushing other people forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of layers to that. I think one is our defense was very good last night. We rebounded the ball well. We turned them over. That gets you into transition. And I agree with you on pace. Some people are thinking that we're going to be like the 7 seconds or less Suns. That's just not realistic. It's not happening. So if you can get stops, if you can get turnovers, especially, you can get runouts. There was a play last night, and I can't remember who got the rebound, but basically just shoveled it over to Lowry. He immediately threw it ahead to Bam, and it was like a jump ball, kind of like corner of the end zone type play. You didn't see that before. One, because Bam had to stay back there and rebound because nobody else could rebound. And now he can run to the front of the rim. And we're old enough to remember Alonzo Mourning playing. He was an undersized center. He's a little bit different than Bam, but he ran the floor because he was quicker than everybody else. So if you can let Bam get out, and you saw that in the Olympics, it adds a whole nother layer because he doesn't have to stay back. I like point Bam. I like Jimmy bringing it up. I like Kyle bringing it up or Tyler bringing it up. And that just gets you out there quicker. But I wonder what's going to happen if we are not playing as well defensively. How do we get out into transition if we're taking the ball out of the net? That becomes a lot more difficult. And last night we didn't see that.
But I think that's the last thing the Heat fans are worried about. I think there is a feeling that this team is going to be good enough defensively that they can do that, and that is the way that they get easy buckets. I'm glad you mentioned Zoe because, again, I'm having these flashbacks as I'm watching this team last night because the Lowry Bam connection reminded me in so many ways of Tim and Zoe. And like you mentioned it too, Tim was not running the length of the floor at that point. Like this was not run TMC Tim by the time he came here. It was him hitting it head, and it was often Zoe finishing. And that team, again, they played in the muck because it was also a 90s style, and it was the way that Pat wanted to play. But that team didn't have Mark Strickland was like their only high flyer, and he didn't play very much. But they ran opportunistically, and they did create that, particularly in the regular season. I remember it might have been their third year together as a group, and they got off to a flying start. I covered all those games on the road, and they were just – I think they started 20-4, and they were just a machine offensively. It was like, where did this come from? And everybody's like, oh, my God, the Riley defensive Knicks it came from the Knicks style, but the defensive Heat style has flipped. When it got to the playoffs, it mucked up again, okay? And so I think the point is we talk about pace. It's cute to talk about it now, but ultimately if this team is going to go anywhere in the postseason, they're going to need to execute in the half court. They're going to need to get easy baskets in the half court, Sean. And I think, again, as I'm watching Lowry yesterday and I'm watching his eyes up all the time, he's going to see those opportunities that, again, they have not. Who have they had? Jason Williams? Is that right?
And ultimately, if you're not talking about Lowry, the other guys, you're more willing to run and get to your spots if you know you're going to get the ball. Imagine if you're a receiver and you know the quarterback can't get you the ball, you're not going deep every time because eventually you're like, man, this is crazy. I'm just wasting my energy. And it's not just about that pitch ahead to Bam, but I think having Duncan, Tyler, the guys going to the wings, now you're stretching them out sideways, from sideline to sideline, while also stretching it baseline to baseline. That just makes the defense harder to guard. And
you're also stretching – you're stretching baseline to baseline with Tucker running to that corner too. So essentially you have PJ running. I mean, it's almost like nobody is really running to the rim except Bam, right? But it's okay because you're creating the kind of space for him to do that.
And it's going to give you space for guys like Jimmy or Kyle that can get into the middle and get to the basket. And you saw Kyle last night. You talked about Tim Hardaway. Neither of them are speedy point guards. What they do is they shift gears. They go from slow to a little bit faster than slow, like to a average speed. And that change in pace is what creates separation. And you saw last night where he did that kind of hit the brakes. They were in the bonus. I think it was in the second quarter.
Yep.
And that's not something the league is trying to get rid of. They're trying to get rid of Steph Curry last night jumping into the guy. Right. Putting the brakes on is not something people do that in high school basketball. People do in college basketball. That's a good thing. And it's recognition that, hey, we're in the bonus. I'm going to hit the brakes. I'm going to go to the free throw lines and probably get 2 points.
That's the other thing about this team that I think it creates a lot of their upside is there is a very high IQ level to this group. We talk about toughness and everybody thinks about it like physical toughness, right? And that kind of thing. And yes, they did bring a lot of that in. Okay. But there's, I think, an intellectual toughness about this group. There's not a lot of knuckleheads in this rotation. It's like Kyle Korver said to me once, I remember when he was with Atlanta, when he was with that really good group in Atlanta where they all made the All-Star team, except DeMarre Carroll, who actually had the best second half of the season that year. And he said, you can have one knucklehead on your team. You can't give him a buddy. And we have seen some Heat teams where knuckleheads get buddies. This team that does not really exist. I mean, you look at their rotation. I mean, Bam is high IQ. PJ Tucker is high IQ. Kyle Lowry is high IQ. We know Jimmy Butler's basketball IQ is, pretty much, off the charts. Duncan, high IQ. Okay. I think Tyler is a very high IQ player in terms of what he's trying to accomplish offensively. I think obviously there's things he needs to learn defensively. Max Strus looks to always be in the right place. Like he doesn't seem to be a guy who has to be overly coached. And then they plug in a guy like and Dedmon also. For what he is, he's good in his, it's like master your role. He knows what his role is. He doesn't get out of his role. But then you watch a guy like Caleb Martin last night, and I'm like, well, he fits. Like he looks to me like, I know there's some playing differences, but a little Magruder-ish actually, in the sense of he's just a plug-and-play type guy. Who is going to do a little bit of everything. Like he's not going to be a rotation player, but he is a guy I think could get minutes here early.
I like to steal a line from Norris that I host a podcast with, and he's obviously part of our network. And I like to think it came from Spo, is be a star in your role. He talked about when I was on the Heat, I came off the bench. I wanted to be a star in my role. I didn't need to be. It did,
Sean.
He did. I agree.
It did come from Spo.
So it's like one of those things where, like, if you're Dedmon, just play hard, rebound, defend. You don't have to get us 12 points. I want you to get 6 rebounds, or at least just keep your guy off the boards. You talked about that with PJ on the pod today, keeping your man off the board so that other people can get it. I don't care who gets the rebound as long as it's us. With Caleb Martin last night, and you were there, and I wish I could have heard, but like he was constantly moving.
Yeah.
Every time away from the ball, his feet were moving, his body was moving, his head was moving. That's a guy that knows what he's doing. There's another guy that wears number 11 that seems to be standing still constantly and always seems lost. That seems like the two-way guy, not the guy that's really on the two-way. So that's, I agree. There's a professionalism, there's an experience, and I think it comes from the top also. I think when you have leaders like Jimmy, Kyle, Bam that are going to hold you accountable, you're going to live up to their standards. Whereas, like you said, a couple knuckleheads, that's where, I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'll say this too. And I think that Caleb Martin gives them a bit of a mulligan on 11, at least for now, right? It sort of plugs that roster spot in a way that we didn't know that they would plug that roster spot. But you also said, like, I'm with you that Jimmy and Kyle holding people accountable is helpful, and Bam as well. But I think the other part of that is I think Kyle's going to hold Bam accountable and in a way that he needs to be. And there were a couple of occasions last night where Bam sent the ball out and Kyle sent it back in. Okay. And that didn't happen either with this group. It's kind of like when Bam would send the ball out, it's like, all right, Bam doesn't want it. We're going to swing it. He waited for Bam to get better position and he sent it back in. And I'm not saying this is going to be like when Tim would send it back into Zoe constantly because Zoe was demanding it in the post, because the game has changed. But Bam is going to be forced to be aggressive this year by Kyle Lowry. I don't think there's any question about it.
Because he's going to give him the ball where he can be successful. Right. There was a time last night, obviously that reverse dunk is the play that everybody remembers. You give it to him and he just figures out a way to put it in the basket, right? He's just turning around. He's such a good athlete. There was a play where he caught it kind of mid-post and attacked Gorgie Dang. Obviously, it's not Brook Lopez. It's not a superior guy, but like he recognized, I have the ball with space. I'm going to attack him and basically put him in the basket. Like that's what you want out of Bam. The first play where he caught the ball squared up and shot a jump shot. Like how many times last year did we just beg for him to do that? And so I think, like you said, Kyle and Jimmy are going to put the ball in his hands and say, look, this is where you can be successful from those different spots. Go lead us. Go take care of it. Because those two guys don't care about leading scoring. If Bam leads us in scoring, those guys are going to clap their hands. If he's an all-star, they're going to clap their hands. That's the mentality I think that our team has.
I know you got more important work to do, so I'm going to put you on the spot here and put everybody on the network on the spot. I've kind of made a bold prediction, which I not a lot of people agree with, although I polled it last night, that I do believe Tyler Hero could lead this team in scoring. I wonder about the consistency. That's the thing. I think there could be some 3 for 11 games in there that mess with the averages. And also, obviously, Jimmy's ability to get to the line gives him some of those free points at the end of games. So we've seen that. But if you were to say, I got to pick one guy this year, give me your leading scorer and give me a points per game number.
I'm going to go Bam. I think because of what we just talked about, getting easy opportunities from a variety of guys, I'm going to say right around 17. I think best case scenario is the balance. balance.
So
If
you
we
have
have
it lower than I do then. So 17, because I think someone can get to 19, be pushing 20. You think it's going to be
maybe a little higher. I'm trying to, probably 17, 18 in that range. But I think your Tyler Hero 6 man of the year bet is golden. I don't know so much about the leading scorer, though.
And to that, we'll get to that in a second, where you bet it, because it's right over Sean's shoulder. That's a hell of a segue. All right, Sean, go work with
I got some 7th graders that are coming in here. So
work with your developing youth. That's much more important. You can follow them at Rochester NBA and on the other platforms on our network. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, well, Sean mentioned it, so let's get to it. BetUS, that's where you go at betus.com. Last night, I looked on there while I was at the game, and Tyler Hero, the number has moved. It was 20-1. I should have played it there. It's now 16-1. I don't know if it moved during the game while he was, scoring 16 points in the first quarter. But the number did move, but you can still get it. 6 man of the year, 16-1. I threw $25 down to win 400. What was I going to do with the $25? Get sushi? Might as well see if you can get $400 out of it. Go to betus.com. Use the code word 5, FIVE. They got a great live betting platform as well. If you don't want to just do the futures, of course, you can bet the NFL. I don't know what that number is going to be between the Dolphins and the Bucks. I haven't checked it yet. I'm sure it's probably 9 or higher. But you can go bet that there. Also, over-unders, whatever it is you want to do. You can see also they got the casino games. But here's the big thing. You use the code word 5. You're going to get yourself a bonus, okay? So you're going to get 125%. They don't have a ton of rollovers, so you will get your money back quickly when you win. So go to betus.com. Again, they've been in business for more than 25 years. You can trust them. I don't know if you can trust Warren Sapp, but he's a spokesman, and go to betus.com. I've got Warren Sapp stories for days. Anyway, let's close here. And I, again, recommend that you listen to 5 on the Floor and get Alex's perspective, because I think one of the things that Alex noticed last night, he was really watching Lowry on defense. We have focused more on offense in the past 24 hours because they looked so crisp. And again, 18 assists in the first half without arguably your best player. I don't think it's arguable at this point, but it could be as the season develops. But defensively, too, there's a lot to like. And we knew that when they acquired these guys, but when you see it in action and you see how they compensate for each other's limitations, Kyle Lowry at this stage is not a perfect defender, okay? We watched it last night. He sometimes he was kind of pushing his defender a certain way, maybe giving up a little bit on a play and this kind of stuff, but there is a stoutness to him in terms of understanding how to play in certain situations that, again, you weren't going to get from Goran Dragic because it just wasn't his end of the floor where he excelled. And I think that is going to be something we see this year, that defensively at the point of attack, Kyle Lowry, I think obviously having PJ Tucker available for switching is going to be big. Bam switching out last night. You've got Jimmy. Maybe Oladipo comes back. You throw Caleb Martin in as kind of a change of pace guy for a few minutes when you need a perimeter defender. They have enough bodies to be really good on that end of the floor. Alex talked about it last year a lot, okay, as did Brady. You can have a couple of bad defenders on the floor or subpar defenders on the floor at the time. You start getting to 3, you can't defend. And last year, there were too many times where Spoelstra had to make a choice between someone who could defend and someone who could score. I think their best defensive lineups this year are going to be able to score some. Not at elite level, but they're going to be able to score some. As long as you have Duncan or Tyler out there and you've got Kyle out there who's a plus defender, you can make up for whatever limitations you might have from Duncan and Tyler if they don't improve enough with having Jimmy and Bam and Kyle out there and possibly PJ out there with them. So they are going to be able to compensate defensively for these guys, but also, again, their best defensive lineups are going to be at least average offensively. That was not the case last year. It gives Spoelstra a lot of flexibility down the stretch of games. The one concern last night, PJ Tucker, groin injury, not the specific injury, but we are going to see this year. These guys are in their 30s, a lot of them. There are going to be guys who sit out. So we'll probably get a look at Markieff Morris as a starter here for a couple of preseason games. And Omer Yurtseven, who we were already potting by this point, but I guess he accumulated 8 rebounds in about 6 minutes. He's going to get a little bit more of a look there. But I liked what I saw last night. I think you have to take positive things out of it. It's just a preseason game, but I do think it matters for a team that is being constructed differently than last year's team with some new faces here to click early so that they know that things that Spoelstra is talking about are working. I do think that matters. I think that can carry them as they go forward in the season. All right, check out our sponsors. You Break Wheel Fix, BetUS.com. BetUS.com. You got to use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Underdog Fantasy. We are going to be doing these drafts this week, okay? So if you're a fantasy basketball fan, you want to take on me, Alex, Brady, Sean, Tony, Adam, Alana, Royal, the rest of our crew, you're going to be able to do it over at underdogfantasy.com. But make sure you sign up using the code 5RSN there. I'll be back tomorrow. Kai's going to join me. We're going to talk about the Dolphins mess and Deshaun Watson. We'll get into all of that tomorrow. Check out the latest 5 on the Floor.